Cross. This was German, or this one. So let's do read. So read through. Right now I'm looking at one that I actually can understand. If I can't read it, or if I don't agree with it, I don't sign my name to it, so. Computer dear, I'm doing one of my recordings. Yeah, I can't accept these. Let's do a different section today. I enjoy the needs review because it's a little bit more of training my eye for this job, and I like that. Okay, so I did make an error. I wasn't doing the bracket. That's a lesson learned. .504, the Yellow Review. Oh, this is an easy one. I like it when they're easy. That he was not what Dr. Patterson would call aggressively rhythmic. I think I can, without much difficulty, show. I'm perfectly aware that he has given and cognate reasons for writing, as he did a backward glance of traveled roads, but it is by these very utterances that I intend to prove my point. First and foremost, Whitman was chiefly propagandist and only afterwards a poet. He admits so much to himself when he says, I have saved the profoundest service that poems of any other writings can do their reader is not merely to satisfy the intellect or supply something polished and interesting. Technically, this is supposed to be broken right here to the next sentence because it's that way in the book, the hashtag. That doesn't really. Do you need to reject something over something so minor? Or even the depict great passions or persons or events, but to fill him with vigorous and clean manliness, religiousness, and give great heart as radically possession and habit. That is merely a splendidly virile restatement of the Victorian theory that the chief end of art is a moral one. There is nothing in it which would not have met with the hearty accord of the Longfellow and Tennyson. For after all, far-seeing though he was, Whitman was fundamentally of his age. And this fact confronts us again and again. It is true that among modern poets, lost my place there. For after all, far-seeing though he was, Whitman was fundamentally of his age. There is one group which holds somewhat to his opinion. But by far the most important poet believes art to be its entirety a saving entity, in which woman in itself contains the other. But nevertheless, something of supreme value as it is, a work of art is not static but dynamic. It carries within itself the power of growth and change. It is a moral effect, it is not direct. It is insidious and persistent. A man does not love his wife because it improves his character to do so. He loves her because he must. I love you, chicken. Can you please stay outside? His spiritual nature requires such functioning, but it is undeniable that the feeling serves a moral end as well. At moments, Whitman dimly apprehended this, but generally his mind was too harsh and primitive in texture to grasp it fully. He had very curiously limited his way of viewing his life principally. New Poetry, page 505, number 23. From the outside. Whatever may have been the case in years gone by, the true use of an adjective imaginative faculty in modern times is to give ultimately vivification of the facts. To science and common lives, endowing them with the glows and glories and final illustrations which belong to every real thing, and to real things only. There is his vision in the last line, and that in his bequest to a new world. Whitman was like a prophet straying in a fog and shouting half truths with the voice of great trumpets. He was seeking something, but he had never quite knew quite what, and he never found it. He vanishes in the mist, and the world's flat back, dim, superb, thus behind him. Whitman was artist enough, even in his beginning, to perceive that the type of verse current in his day would not fit the sublime and gracious message which meant poetry to him. He sought and sought, but what he reached was not through a process of creation, but through one of elimination. For grounds, leaves of grass as a poem, I abandoned conventional themes which do not appear in it. None of stock ornamentation, or choice plots of love, or war, or high, exceptional personages of old war song. Nothing, as I may say, for beauty's sake, no legend, or myth, or romance, no euphemism nor rhyme, but the broadest average of humanity, and it's now identifies in some ripening 19th century, especially in each of their countless examples, and practical occupations in the United States today. One can imagine being read centuries hence for his list of occupations, such as Virgil's, Joric's, greatly delightful for its catalog of agricultural labors. But Virgil's catalogs are scarcely Whitman's. Those interminable bald statements of trade, flat, 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 seldom a pregnant word, scarcely relieving gesture in 400 pages, I found so few. Here they are. Earth of a virtuous pour on the full moon, tinged by the sing of blue. It's so strange to move from this from the Red Cross I have to say, I'm enjoying reading this quite immensely. '58 Walt Whitman. Well, wrong is half said. Half said. It was suited to him as a poet because he had somewhat wandering sense of form and of melody, which often makes one's conceptions seem the more glorious to himself, as if invested with a halo or blended with concurrent sound, and prevents him from lessening or enlarging them by the decision master hand, or at once perfecting them by sure control. A man who finds that his gloves cripple him does right in drawing them off. At first, Whitman certainly meant to escape all technique, but genius, in spite of himself, makes words that stand test. So my slow premiere. So if I find a mistake, I can't full screen it. Okay. We do not use full screen. But genius, in spite of itself, makes works that stand the test of scientific laws, and thus he now sees he is groping towards a broader technique. Unrhythmed verse, the easiest to write, is the hardest to excel in, and no measure for bargaining. And Mr. Whitman never really displays his feelings. Display the feeling of a true artist. Never more nearly. Display the feeling of a true artist when he expressed the doubt whose present handling of his own verse, but hoped that in breaking loose from ultramarine forms, he had sounded at least the key for a new paean. I referred to the gradual advances in the finish of his song. Whether he had reviewed a form which will carry still higher excellence, it is doubtful. Blank verse, limitless in its capacities, forces a poet to stand without disguise, and reveals all his or her defects. Whitman's verse, it does not subject him so severe a test. He can so twist and turn himself, and run and jump, that we are puzzled to inspect him at all, or to make out his contour. Yet few who have ventured to follow him have produced little that has not seemed like parody, or unpleasantly grotesque. Maybe that his mode is suited to himself alone, and not to the future poets of these states. That the next original genius will have to sing as Martin Luther sang, and the glorious armies of poetic worthiness. I suspect that the old forms and endless combinations will return as long as new poets arise with the old abiding sense of time and sound. The greatest poet is many-sided, and will hold himself slavishly to no one thing, for the sake of difference. He is a poet too, in spite of measure and material. Well, as to manner, the style is the man. Genius does not need a special language. It newly uses whatever tongue it finds. Thought, fire, passion will overtop everything, and will show like the limbs of Teravino, which the clothes of a prince, or a beggar. A cheap and common instrument, odious in foolish hands, becomes a slave of music under touch. But masterful. I attach much less importance, therefore, to Whitman's experiments in verse than he and his critics have, and inquire his mannerism simply how far it represents to man. To show how little there is in itself, we only have to think of Tupper, to see how rich it may be. When the utterance of genius, listen to Whitman's teachers, William Blake. It does not prove much, but it's still interesting to note that the pieces whose quality never fails with any class of hearers, of which my captain is an example, are those in poet has approached most nearly, and in lyrical melodious manner, to the ordinary forms. He is far more original in his style proper than the metrical inventions. His diction on its good behavior is copious and strong and full. Quiet down. I know, Sadie. You want to chase all those bigger dogs. Come here. It's okay. Calm down. You're good, baby. On its good behavior is copious, that full of strongs, full of surprises, utilizing the brave, homely words of the people, and assigning new duties to common verbs and nouns. He has a use of his own for Spanish and French catchwords, picked it up, it may be, on his trip to Louisiana or in Mexican war times. Among all this is much slang that now has lived its life. And is not understood by a new generation with a slang of its own. This does not offend so much as the mouthing verbiage, the constant evanescence, phrases, wherein he seems profoundest to himself and is really at his worst. The titles of his books and poems are varied and sonorous. Those of the latter often are taken from the opening lines and are keynotes. What can be fresher than leaves of grass and calamus? What richer than mystic trumpeter, O star of France, Proud music is the storm, or the simpler drum taps, the wound dresser, the ox tamer, were more characteristic than give me the splendid silent sun, Mannahatta. As a strong bird on pinions free, joy, shipmate joy. Some of these are obscure and grandiose, Antilions, chanting the square defy, but usually his titles arrest the eye and haunt the ear. It is an artist that invests in them, invents them, and the best pieces have the finest names. He has the art of saying things, his epitaphs, which, although racier than most other poets, there is something of the Greek in Whitman, and his lovers call him Homeric. But to me, he shall be our old American Ezoid, teaching us works and days. His surest then is an American poet gifted with language, feeling, and imagination. And inspired by determined purpose, some estimates, as what I've said, may be made of his excellence and shortcomings without waiting for that national absorption which he himself declares to be the test. As a simulating poet of nature, he has positive genius, and seems to me to present his strongest claims. Who else, in fact, has so true a hand for the details that sweep in color of American landscape? Like others, he confronts the superb physical aspects of the New World, which have controlled our poetry and painting, and deferred the growth of a figure school. But in this conflict, the nature he has not overcome, he is a joyous brother in arms, if not the master. He has heard the message of pushing wind-swept sea along Potomac shore. He knows the yellow waning moon and rising stars, the sunset with its cloud bar of gold above the horizon. The birds that sing by night or day, rush and briar, and every shining or swooning flower. The peaks, the prairie, the mighty, conscious river, the dear common grass that children fetch with full hands. Little escapes him, not even the messy scab of the worm fence and heaped stones, mullein and pokeweed, but the detailed are massed, blended. The wind saturates and the lights of American skies transfigure them. Not to me, recalling to the penetrative glance of Emerson. The wood-side craft, its level carrying of as a sprig of fir, and recalling other things. Does Whitman seem that our only poet of nature? But that there he is on his own ground, and no man his leader. Furthermore, his intimacy with nature is always subjective. She furnishes the background for his self-portraiture, and his images of men. None so apt as he to observe the panorama of life, to see the human figure, the haymaker, the wagoner, the boatman, the soldier, women and babe, and maiden, and brown lusty boy, to hear not only the bravest birds, bustle of growing wheat, gossip of flames, clack of sticks, cooking my meals, but also the sound I love, the sound of human voice. His town and country scenes in peace of war are idyllic, while the genre for utter warmth and sympathy. He can only name and designate. He does not depict. A single sketch done in some original way makes a poem, such as roses reminiscent in rhyme, the old southern Negroes, Ethiopia saluting the colors, and such the conceit of old Ireland, no far. And green robe Hibernia of the harp, but an ancient, wonderful, sorrowful mother, white-haired, lean and tattered, seated on the ground, mourning for her children. He tells her they are not dead, but risen again, with rosy and new blood. And in country, this is admirable, I say, and the true way to escape tradition. This is imaginative, and there is imagination too in his apostrophe, the man of war bird, carried beyond description by his second highest mood. He finds it hard to avoid blank verse. Thou hast slept all night upon the storm, and voit renew and prodigious pinions. Thou born to match the gale, thou art all wings, to cope with heaven and earth and sea and hurricane. Thou ship of air, hast never furlest thy sails. Days, even weeks, untried onward, through spaces, realms gyrating. As dark that longest unseen moment, the morn America, that sports amid the lightning clash and thunder cloud. In these, in thy experience, hast thy soul. What joys are thine? Imagination is the essential. Without in poetry is a sounding brass of a tinkling cymbal. Whitman shows that it is sudden and novel imagery. In a subjective rapture of verse like this, quite as often his vision is crowded and consistent. The editor of the New York Magazine writes, to me, in so far in imagination, was thinking through at Delia. Whitman has no equal, adding that he does not use the term as if applied to Coleridge, but is limited to the use of types, and that in this sense it is really more applicable to a master of science than poet. In the poet, the types is lodged in his own heart. And when the occasion comes, he is mastered by it, and he must sing. In Whitman, the type that is not so much the heart as his thought. While moved by thought, often grand and elementary, he does not give the intellectual satisfaction warranted by the thought. but a moving panorama of objects. He not only puts aside his singing robes, but his thinking cap, and resorts to the stereopticum. How acute, how true. There is nothing in peculiar quality in these long catalogues of types, such as though in the song of broad axe and salute amon, more poetically treated in longings of home. The poet appeals to our synthetic vision and look through the window, and yet you only see a framed landscape. It is a tree, a stone, and living things. His. That was just beautiful. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be reading more of Walt Whitman. I think we're done for today.